A lot of people are always asking, why won't my Cymbidium reflower again for me? I bought it with these magnificent blooms and it has never bloomed again. I've heard about warm flowering and cool flowering Cymbidiums. How do I know which one I've got so I know how to look after it? Let's go through the Cymbidiums that I've got out and show you some of the differences between the two of them and how we can help you get them to reflower again, even if your conditions are not ideal. Welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Here's just a small sample of the different Cymbidiums that we have. We've got warm flowering, cold flowering, and everything in between. So let's just start off with these cold flowering Cymbidiums. These are probably most often the ones that you'll find for sale, and generally they're also the most often used in cut flowers, especially for those corsages and things like that. It's generally the cold flowering Cymbidium. So what do we mean by cold flowering? Well, the cold flowering Cymbidiums need that really cold, almost icy snap, especially in that autumn period, to help that bud initiation. So even as low as 8 degrees Celsius, and that's what they need to help that bud initiation to start to form those beautiful flower spikes. But sometimes it's not only just a short cold snap that they need. They also need big day-night temperature differentiation. So between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius from your night temperature to your day temperature, and that's what will then help force those buds to be produced at the bottom and get your flower spike coming up. Often what people will do, especially in the cooler climates, they'll leave them out during the fall so that they get that cold snap period and then bring them indoors while those buds are still developing into that flower spike, and then they'll get their blooms late winter, early spring. And the warm flowering Cymbidiums, their flowers are often generally larger and they'll often have those big full blooms, especially those hybrids that you see nowadays. They have those big full flowers. But even things with the narrower petals like your Cymbidium tracianum, that's also a cool flowering one with those beautiful brown flowers. So the cool flowering is almost self-explanatory. They need that cold period to force the flower spikes. With warm flowering Cymbidiums, there are several different reasons why they're called warm flowering. It's not necessarily that they're not going to take the same cold temperatures and still thrive, but it means they don't need either that cold snap to force the flower spikes to be produced, or they don't need that big temperature fluctuation between your day-night temperatures to get that flower spike initiation to be started. Even if the temperatures are fairly static between day-night, you'll still get this to force flowers. And remember, when getting your Cymbidium to flower, move it into more light as autumn or fall comes around. So give it that 50% shade during those hot summer months and then bring it out into more and more light as those winter months come around. This will help with all the photosynthesis that it needs to produce more flowers and help the general vigor of your plant. So how can we tell the difference? They look pretty similar. They all have strappy leaves, but often you'll find with your minis and your smalls, these have often been interbred with warmer flowering Cymbidiums from the tropics, and they way more likely to flower in warmer climates or climates where you're not getting big differentiations in temperatures throughout the year. So these are always a good bet. They'll suit just about any home because they're small. You can fit them on a windowsill or somewhere where that's going to be getting a lot of light and still get those amazing blooms. Some of your bigger ones, the Chen's Ruby, this is a hybrid that has been specifically bred for flowering in warmer climates. Also with Cymbidium, with these large, thicker, almost succulent leaves, a lot of these are warm flowering Cymbidiums. They don't need such a big temperature differentiation to force the flowering. And if their temperatures don't go too cold, especially with the Cymbidium aloifolium, this is from the tropics, so invariably it's not going to need anything cooler than 25 degrees for it to actually force blooms. And your Australian Midnight Magic, also a nice full sun Cymbidium that doesn't need all that temperature fluctuation to force flowering. It even flowers extremely well in the tropics. And then we have, with these small and mini Cymbidiums, a lot of these, as I said, have been hybridized with tropical Cymbidiums to allow for that warmer flowering trait. But there has been a problem in hybridizing these. Not always when you hybridize a warm flowering Cymbidium with a cooler flowering Cymbidium do you get one that holds the warm flowering trait. So just be sure with your supplier that you're getting one that is actually warm flowering. And how do we get those cool flowering ones to flower if we're in a climate where we can only really get these warm flowering ones to flower? Well, there's a few little tricks we can use. One of them is throwing ice cubes into your plant every evening in that fall period for about 2 or 3 weeks. But often, if our media is not well enough drained, it's going to start causing problems with holding too much water, and we don't want to rot our roots. So what we could always do is use those fake gel ice cubes that you can buy online. Those are encased in plastic with a gel in the center. Those you can just put on in the evening, let it bring that temperature right down, take them off in the morning again and put them back into the freezer. Or if you've got Coke bottles, plastic Coke bottles or plastic water bottles that you can then freeze up and then lay in and around it, will also help bring those temperatures down without putting all that excess water into your media. Also, evaporation trays below that will help reduce the temperature or the ambient air temperature around the plant so that it can get cooler and hopefully produce those flower spikes. Also, misting in the early evening and again in the early morning, just to help keep those temperatures of your plant down. And if you are actually able to put automatic misters that you can intermittently mist them during the evening, that will help a lot too. But remember not to overwater so we don't rot the roots. But if you don't have a cold flowering Cymbidium already and you're in an area that's not really suited, rather find some of these amazing warm flowering Cymbidiums to make sure that you get blooms every year. And then again, remember, they're not called warm flowering Cymbidiums because they only grow in warm climates. They'll still grow just as well in those same temperatures that your cold flowering Cymbidiums will grow, and they'll still flower and bloom, but they just don't need that cold snap or that day-night temperature differentiation. So if you have one of these cool flowering Cymbidiums, there's still ways to get it to flower. I've also heard monthly treatments with magnesium sulfate helps your cool flowering Cymbidiums force flowers in suboptimal climates. So that's always worth a try. So if you're trying to figure out if your Cymbidium is a warm flowering or a cool flowering Cymbidium, not always the easiest thing, just a few guidelines to check out for. Often the smaller and miniature Cymbidiums are often hybridized with tropical Cymbidiums and are thus generally more warm flowering Cymbidiums. Although some of the larger plants too have now been hybridized to become warm flowering Cymbidiums. Also, when looking at the flower, the larger the bloom and the fuller the flower, generally you'll have a cool flowering Cymbidium. They're still working on getting those to be warm flowering, but it could be a way off still. And then look at those leaves. If your leaves are thick and fleshy and pretty upright, then it's quite possibly you have a warm flowering Cymbidium. Although there are a lot of them out there that are warm flowering that are strap leaf, like all of your cold flowering Cymbidiums. So often the easiest way to tell is by seeing a picture of the flower. If it's those big, large, full flowers, it's probably a cool flowering one. Other than that, it's quite a difficult thing if your plant doesn't have flowers on it at the time. Your best bet is to try give it that coolness. If you don't want to empty everything out of your fridge and pop it in there for a couple of weeks, which is not always a good idea, is to try some of those other methods I suggested to see if you can get it to bloom. And if you're not having any luck, then pass it on to someone else in a cooler climate. Just a suggestion, go buy yourself one from someone who knows what they're selling. And if you found any of this information useful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.